Texas on this cloudy day. It's Color Commentary, and we are Michael Petchik and
Adrian Guarzales.
All right, and people had a pretty good reaction to the first episode. I was a little shocked.
Yeah, I was a little too. Thank you guys.
I told my fiance, I posted something on the internet and no one told me to kill myself, so I feel like I've accomplished something.
Yeah, it's definitely encouraged us to do more. And this time I think we're going to try and provide just a scooch more structure to the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. Like last episode was our first attempt at podcasting, so room for improvement. So we're going to start off with a segment where we're just going to recap our week and what we've been playing both online and at our F&M. And you want to lead us off here, Adrian?
Yeah, sure. I played Affinity at F&M, obviously. Had some great games. Played against Goblins, drew Circle Protection Red. That was nice.
Yep, that is kind of just the hard lock against that deck.
Played against Delver. I split with Delver. Played against Infect, the Grixis version.
Yes, we have a, what is he? He's probably 12 years old or so. And
Grixis Infect.
It's okay. Like,
it wins.
When it's explosive because he's running like Unstable Mutation. He's running Reckless Charge. Like, it can just out of nowhere just hit you for 10 Infect.
Yeah, and it's like he wins with it. Somehow he's winning with. I think really it's because he's playing Nizium Skin and he's playing Undying Evil, which just he's only playing like 12
eight creatures.
8 creatures. But you get.
I ran the odds. He has basically the odds of drawing 1 in his opening hand every game on average. But still, like it's.
But it wins. It's
yeah.
Such is the nature of the beast. And round 1, I played against Tortured Existence. That's right.
Yes.
Was it green black? I actually don't know. He never really got his mana off the ground.
Yeah, I saw him playing a later round. He establishes a loop with a Balustrade Spy to mill you out.
That's spicy.
Yeah. It was interesting because that's the thing about Tortured Existence. You can really put anything you want in there, and it's probably going to get the job done. So I have been playing a bit on Moto, and I've been grinding Black-White Pestilence Kitty, which is like a pet deck that is solidly tier 2. Like, it does fine in the just for fun room, but the moment you go to tournament practice, it's just like, oh yeah, Delver still exists, and other good fast decks exist, but like, against janky decks, it's fine. Like, having 6 Wraths, 4 of which you can rebuy in the form of Crypt Rats with Grim Harvest. It gets there. Like, it's solid.
Can Delver beat a Resolved Pestilence?
Probably. Like, the deck only runs 1/5 toughness creature, so getting rid of their Spire Golems is a bit tricky.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's pretty good against them. There's not a whole lot of counter interaction. Your removal is a playset of Journeys and then 2 Pestilence and 4 copies of Crypt Rats. And like, it does have some loops in there. Like, I'm running Oromancer alongside Font of Return. Font of Return is the one. I'll explain this one because it's not a commonly played card. It's 1 in a black, enchantment, 3 in a black, sacrifice it, return up to 3 creature cards from your graveyard to your hand.
And that's part of the font cycle from Journey into Nyx.
But with Oromancer, you can just kind of create this stable loop where you get back 3 things, including 1 Oromancer, play the Oromancer, get back Font of Return, play out the Font of Return, and just continue to loop stuff until they finally realize, I'm not getting out of this.
Yes.
But that's what I've been playing on Moto, and then Friday I played Creatureless Teachings and did really poorly with it. I bricked on land against Delver. I had like a handful of counterspells that showed up after he had played his threats.
One of the games I looked at it looked like you were stuck on 3 black mana for a long time too. So.
Yeah, I didn't. I kept a couple of like tenuous hands, and they just didn't get there. So this week I'm probably showing up with something like Mono Red Heroic, something fast and quick and to the point. I don't know. That's usually like my default response when I can't do well with a control deck, is just go balls to the wall aggro and just grind out a couple games.
Yeah, I mean, Mono Red Heroic is nothing to sneeze at. It's I kind of want to put it on the same power level as Goblins, although you don't get access to like Goblin Grenade which is a common in paper. We allow it at our local meta. I don't know if we touched on that last episode.
We did.
Okay.
So it has way more explosive starts than Goblins, potentially. Like, it runs Temur Battle Rage, and it runs Immolating Soul Eater.
Oh, right.
And Immolating Soul Eater, you just pump all your life into it, make it a 10-10.
It's a turn 2 kill, right?
Turn 3.
Turn 3, okay.
And it is super situational. Like, you are going to need a couple of mutagenic growths in hand. But it also has Kiln Fiend. It has a lot of great threats. It can go wide if needed with a Crowan... Crusader, there we go. That just has the heroic trigger, put a 1/1 with haste into play. Like, it can go wide, it can go tall. And I really like it as a deck. I don't think it's tier 1, but, it's fast enough that a lot of people have trouble, like, dealing with it.
Yeah, well, especially when you consider that in this format, if you're playing more than one color, you're going to have to play tap lands.
Yes.
Which a deck like that in Goblins can really leverage.
Yes, 100%. But yeah, I went 1/2 drop because I had the buy, and, I don't know, not super salty about it, but, like, a little frustrated.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been enjoying what I've been playing. It's just time for a change, so I think I'm going to go back to, like, lightning fast aggro because I enjoy that. I enjoy a deck that can outrace Boggles.
Yeah, I guess until they resolve Armadillo Cloak. And then how do you win?
Yeah, no, Armadillo Cloak makes it tough, but, like, it's a deck that's not really planning on letting it go that late. And it does have some pretty sweet sideboard stuff. It's actually one of the few red decks that does not run Gorilla Shaman out of the side.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's surprising. What is it?
You run Smelt.
Smelt?
Smelt, 1 red, instant, blow up an artifact.
Why would you play that over Gorilla Shaman?
Because Gorilla Shaman is slower.
That's true. You have to, realistically, you're casting Gorilla Shaman maybe turn 3.
But a lot of times people will turn to it just so you can start blowing up lands.
That's fair.
And sometimes you do the super aggressive turn 1 Gorilla Shaman, just daring them to like blow it up.
I wish I would play against more people who did turn 1 Gorilla Shamans. I'd be like, nope, get that out of here.
Usually the turn 1 Gorilla Shaman is indicative of, I have another in hand, and I'm just going to make this really miserable for you.
Yeah, the card's the bane of my existence.
But, yeah, no, like, it's definitely time for a swap up, in my opinion, for me personally. But yeah, so we've got 2 things we're going to cover today. We're going to try and do a weekly deck tech of some cool brew that we've seen or got sent.
Yeah, and if you want to send us a brew to go over, you can email us at colorcommentary, COMMON, Terry, at gmail.com, and we'll take a look. This most recent one we actually got off of Reddit.
Yep, we got a lot of great feedback from there, and Reddit user 13th Fox sent in a list entitled Servitor Control, because I mentioned that I like Trinket Mage.
And I also, I'm an artifact guy. I can get behind a good Trinket Mage. And I saw the list, and I've actually been thinking, how can I break Mere Servitor? I was unaware of the existence of Thoughtpicker Witch, I'll be quite honest with you. But basically, this combo, Mere Servitor says, at the beginning of your upkeep, if Mere Servitor is in play, each player returns all cards named Mere Servitor from his or her graveyard to play. And Thoughtpicker Witch says, sacrifice a creature, or sacrifice a creature, look at the top 2 cards of target opponent's library, then remove one of them from the game.
So he mentioned, he wrote up a primer for it, and I looked for it.
Or she.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I have no good reason to make that claim, but primer got written up, and the easy comparison here is Lantern Control. It controls your opponent's top decks and tries to make it so they're bricking.
Yes, and it gets to play a pretty good little package, honestly. It plays Trinket Mage because you can tutor from your Servitor. You can tutor for your artifact lands.
Sylvog Lifestaff, because you're sacrificing creatures anyway.
And one of Executioner's Capsule, which is a tutorable Doomblade in essence.
Yeah, I love Executioner's Capsule, and it's one of those ones where, yes, it's a Doomblade, but it doesn't even feel that bad main deck, because most of the time you're tutoring for it, and the games where it matters, like going turn 1 Executioner's Capsule against a Delver player who has a pile of counterspells or something of that nature, feels great because you've got an uncounterable kill spell. And And the rest of the list kind of all follows what you might expect. 4 counterspells, 2 deprives, so, making sure your threats resolve. Threats, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. It's got a forbidden alchemy to dig through your library and get stuff in the graveyard.
Yeah, you can even get the servitors in the graveyard, and as long as you have one on the battlefield, who cares?
I mean, every so often I feel like because it's 4 cards. How bad would that feel if you just forbidden alchemy and actually no, even if you hit all 4 of them, you get 1 in hand, and actually that feels okay.
Yeah.
Runs Grim Harvest as a recursion engine. 4 Ponder, 4 Preordain for card filter. 4 Unearth, which when I first looked at the list I thought was a little high, but I did some testing with it, and actually it feels really good.
Yeah, you're so not. I guess you're not. Like, you're really reliant on this interaction between Thoughtpicker Witch and Mirror Servitor. And the list, I don't think we mentioned this, it does play a 1 of Gurmag Angler to close out the games a little faster.
Actually, I read the primer, and they indicated that a lot of the time it's just a big blocker because it eats everything else in the format besides Ulamog's Crusher. And they did also mention, it's a clock in itself, and it can close out the game. But yeah, this is like a super grindy control deck. This is like, it's pretty minimal on removal, but it does have some counter magic, and it does kind of have inevitability on its side. Like, once the lock is in place, I've found people have a very hard time getting out of it. Because instant speed, you can filter their draws for them. And that doesn't feel good at all.
No. I mean, Modern Lantern Control is not a fun deck to play against either. Their lock is arguably a little better because it's not creature-based. But it's the same effect.
Yeah. This deck would just benefit 100% from having some sort of way to reveal the top card of your opponent's library at all times, so that way if you can just kind of leave it there. When I was playing, I'm not 100% sure if I'm handling this correctly, but I was Thoughtpicker Witching on their upkeep to brick a draw, and then in just once, try and get a land on top or try and get a dead card on top.
Upkeep seems good to me.
Yeah, and then keeping up the rest of the activations I had available in response to draw spells. And you're basically a mill deck with at most 1 mill per turn in a lot of cases, and that's real grindy. But you're doing a better job of milling in some ways because it exiles, which I think is important. Like, against Tortured Existence, you're not giving them more fodder in the graveyard.
Or even against Mono Black Control, where you might be feeling one of their anglers late game.
Yeah. Like, it definitely feels better in that respect. It's super slow. It's not like the Turbo Fog lists, which can just mill 10 cards in one turn. But the issue with mill is always, it doesn't matter until the last card is gone. Because if you mill stuff that doesn't matter in the matchup, you're just helping them get to the stuff that does. And that's one of the, again, last week we talked about the hard lessons to learn. Pure life gain is bad. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of people kind of get into mill when they're first starting out as this idea, it's a cool alternate win con. Wizards keeps printing cards for it, and yeah, I can see the appeal to it. With this, you're actually getting to filter their draws, so it does mean that you kind of have a chance to brick a draw for them, and I think that's super important. And even against a gush or something, you can actually, if they gush, you can do that in response and at least make one of their draws worse.
Yeah, and I'm not the biggest fan of mill. It's not really my play style, and I don't think it's very good in a lot of formats. But I completely agree with you that the fact that you're not just milling them, you get to choose what they're drawing is really what makes this deck pretty appealing to me. Also, we'll talk about the trinket package. I love tutorable effects. The recursion is awesome.
It runs Grim Harvest, which I think is a criminally underplayed card. Every time I see Mono Blacklist not running it, I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah, because they have as many Grimlock Anglers as they want, basically.
Gurmag Angler, I feel less so because you're going to be delving away stuff.
That's true.
A lot of the time, late game, sure, because you're going to have all your lands on the battlefield, and you're going to be able to tap 7 just to get a 5/5. Yeah, no, I think this is a super cool list. I think there's a lot of interesting things about it, and I think it's something that's actually pretty unique within Pauper. Like, it's a new take on a hard control deck. I also love the fact that it's playing like a lot of cards that I feel are kind of like always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
I mean, it's a Grim Harvest Trinket Mage deck. It's right up your alley.
And like it runs Forbidden Alchemy, which I think like on its face always looks like a super sweet card. It sometimes isn't all that great. Like I've run it in teachings and it feels fine there. The fact you can flash it back is really nice. This is exactly the type of list that appeals to me as someone who likes these dirtily grindy control decks. And I'm kind of considering putting it together in paper. There's enough shuffle effects in here where I worry about going to time. Also, it does seem very, very soft against like super aggressive decks. Like I'm talking Affinity, Delver Fiend, Mono Red Heroic, even Goblins.
Yeah, because once they resolve all their creatures and they're smacking you for 5 or 6 damage a turn, and then this is also a deck that can close out the game with Fire Blast and Goblin Grenade. And, if they have it in their hand, there's nothing you can really do other than sort of countering it.
Yeah, I do think that, Goblins might be slightly better of a matchup because you can start chumping with Mirror Servitors.
Mm-hmm, that's true.
I feel like I worry about anything that has a huge threat and then Teamwork Battle Rage.
And there's also an Evancoast Justice and an Echoing Truth in the board.
Yeah, and those are definitely sideboard choices for those sorts of matchups. Like, there's an Annul in there to help against, like, the artifact-based graveyard hate.
Oh, yeah, that's actually something we should bring up. How does this deck beat or resolved Relic of Progenitus? Like, I believe 13th Fox said it could, but it's definitely not ideal.
Yeah, so it does have an Echoing Truth out of the board, which can bounce anything that's a non-land permanent, and then counter it on the way back down. I think in that case, you're probably just kind of sandbagging your servitors and just kind of trying to stay alive while that happens.
There's also 2 annuls out of the board to counter that.
Yeah.
But it seems tough to beat it once it's down.
Yes, especially because, it does, like, yes, it can clear out both graveyards, but it can also just chip away at it progressively. And I feel like that's perhaps more of a problem for this deck. There's also the Stinkweed Imp in the board, which I actually think is kind of interesting. I'm assuming that's a Delver concession because you can dredge yourself back a Death Toucher. It doesn't actually have Death Touch, but it functionally does.
Yeah, and all at the same time filling your graveyard with these sweet Mirror Servitors.
I do like the addition of Stormbound Geist to the board as well. Like, I really like the Undying and Sack effects combo.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think that's a super cool, like, interaction, being able to sack those to make them 3/3s if you need. And just, it's good against, like, Edict-based removal. Even though this deck, I feel like, as soon as you've got multiple servitors in excess of the amount of edicts they have, I think you're probably pretty favored against Mono Black at that point.
Yeah, the only thing, I guess, that you would have to worry about is you should never play out all 4 servitors at once in case they have Echoing Decay. Because that seems like a blowout.
I think you just don't want them all out, just so if they manage, like, if you have 3 of them in play and, one of them gets sacked on their upkeep, one of them trades in combat, you don't want, like, one final removal spell to just be the last nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
Because, like, while you do have recursion, I feel like you'd much rather, like, pay 1 colorless to get them all back than... Because, like, each loop of Grim Harvest is not cheap. Like, it's 5 mana.
Right.
Just to loop it. And in this case, for example, our sacrifice effect costs another mana, so that's 6 plus the 1 to replay the servitor or the Thought Picker Witch. So you're looking at 7 mana to loop Grim Harvest once, which, I would say not ideal, but that's what Grim Harvest does. Like, it's not a quick card. It's not as efficient as Tortured Existence for sure, but yeah, no, like I feel like you're not super favored post-board if they can bring in, like, 3 relics.
Or even Fairy... Oh, no, I guess Fairy Macabre doesn't really matter. It only gets rid of 2 cards, and they have to actually just get rid of your servitor here, right?
Yeah. Like,
and they would have to know... And I think one of the biggest things this deck has going for it is it's pretty rogue. Like, I don't think I've ever seen this deck before. I didn't even know what Thoughtpicker Witch was.
I had seen some talk about it, again, on the pauper subreddit, but I hadn't seen, like, a finished list for it. Because I heard the idea and I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Like, Mere Servitor is one of those weird fringe cards that I could see someone breaking. But now actually, like, seeing the list in front of me, yeah, it seems somewhat viable. It definitely is one of those decks that has, like, really good matchups and really bad matchups. I also imagine it's probably decent against combo because, you know, you've got between main and board, you've got a total of 6 counterspells of assorted quality. So I feel like it's you also Duress out of the board, which is kind of a preemptive counterspell, if you will. Like, I feel that it's probably worst against your aggro decks, and sometimes it just has a rough time post board. But apart from that, as I said, once you get the lock in place, like, it's not a hard lock, but it's real hard to beat.
Yeah, very tough to beat. So we like the deck. Thank you for submitting it, 13th Fox. Mike will have to let you know how it goes if he plays it.
Yeah, I might have to pull this together and show up to F&M with it. Like, I definitely want to get some more reps with the deck and feel it out. But, all right, so the next thing we're going to talk about today is we got a comment from Reddit user #hashswag.
Great Reddit username, by the way.
Yes, I'll give you the concession on that. I like the podcast. Can't wait to hear more. Wouldn't mind hearing a discussion on pauper and quote-unquote budget decks. Like, if it's worth playing Oubliette, Hydro Pyroblast, Gorilla Shamans, other pricey cards. Lots of players come into pauper because they expect a cheap format, and there's always a ton of threads about, I can't afford card, is there a replacement, or should I just buy card? And sort of in prep, I threw together a list, just out of curiosity, more for myself than anything, of every card in this format that is more than $10 for a playset, either on MidGo or on paper. And some of them are obvious, like, you know, the Hydro Pyroblasts have always been pricey on Moto. They're still kind of pricey in paper too, but not quite as much.
They're not $8, which is what Hydroblast is on Moto.
Yeah, and there's obviously, I think one of the shining examples of this is Days, which is a staggering $20 online.
Yeah, it's crazy. Hoping they print it in EMA just so that we can get a price break on Moto.
Yeah, and actually, that's something worth talking about. Like, if you're thinking about getting into pauper, but you're worried about the cost of cards, wait until EMA drops, because there's a chance that, like, Hydro and Pyroblast are heavily played in Legacy. I think they see play in Vintage. I don't honestly know enough about Vintage to really comment.
They seem good enough.
But it's targeted at Eternal formats, and I feel like Hydro and Pyroblast stand a really good chance of seeing a reprint. Days too. But some of these cards can be somewhat replaced. Like, you've got Mono Blue Delver assembled and you online, and you don't run Days, do you?
No, I play Force Spike, which is most of the time good enough. It kind of stinks having to leave 1 mana up to Force Spike. Also, you, like, telegraph the Force Spike if you're leaving up 1 mana, which is the only other problem too. Like, you have to represent it. Whereas with Days, there's a big gotcha factor, you know. But that being said, Days, you know, in a vacuum, is it better than Force Spike? Because this is a deck where you're trying to get enough islands out to play Spire Golem anyway. So, yeah, Days is really good. Force Spike is okay. It's a suitable enough replacement that I say if you want to play Mono Blue Delver on Moto, I would just get the Force Spike. And that's one of those, I actually think that the instances in which you can replace a card like that are actually kind of rare. In paper, we have Red and Blue Blasts, which were printed at Common, but they're not on Moto. And Red and Hydro Blast are just 2 of the best sideboard cards in the format.
Yeah, they're either a counterspell in red for one of them. That's a big thing. Like, helping Red's matchup against, like, blue control is real big. And then they're also removal. Like, that's the big thing. Like, if counterspell, like, traditional counterspell just said, like, 2 blue, counter a spell or destroy target creature. Or destroy target permanent, actually, because they do target permanent.
Yes, they do target permanents.
Like, that's big game right there. Like,
yeah, and especially, like we were talking about earlier, how the mono decks tend to be favored. Delver is the most played deck in the format. If you have access to Pyroblast, you know, that shores up your matchup considerably.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one where there isn't really a good replacement for them. And while they are expensive, and yes, you can wait the couple months for EMA and the spoiler announcements.
And yes, I've even seen lists 5.0 on Moto in the leagues that aren't running these cards.
Yes, but I do think those are ones where the investment does actually pay off.
And not to mention, speaking of that, these are cards that go into any deck that plays blue or red.
Yes, that's the other thing. Like, you just jam these into a sideboard. Like, it's just... No one would think twice about that. Like, they just... When you're playing red or blue, you just kind of have to say to yourself, how many Pyro or Hydroblasts do I need in this deck? And most of the time, the answer is one or more.
Yeah.
Sometimes the full play set.
And that's, you could say that's an unfortunate thing that we are saying, like, kind of have to have these expensive cards. But let's not forget, these cards are $8. And I know that seems like a lot for a play set, but you're not buying, like, 4 Tarmogoyfs or, like, 4... Force of Wills or something.
Yeah.
Like, the format is still very cheap with these.
Yeah, and I can definitely appreciate people coming in this from a budget perspective and, wanting to have the most bang for their buck.
Yeah.
And I think there are some that, could potentially have other options. Because this list is all over the place. Like, we've got some real weird things like Obsidian Acolyte, a sideboard card for mono white decks.
Against mono black
Against
decks.
mono black is $4 per copy on Moto.
And I'm actually going to go ahead and say you probably don't need that card.
There are other options, yes. There's Order of Light Burr, which is a common from Fallen Empires. Yeah.
I didn't realize the Pump Knights were common. Are they both common?
Yeah, they are.
Oh, I did, because I played against that mono black Suicide deck that's playing the Evan Hand one.
Yeah, and while it's not the same thing, it still presents a very difficult threat for them to deal with.
Yes, it still has protection from black, even if it can't give other things protection from black.
Yes, and actually, interestingly enough, the Obsidian Acolyte's part of a pair. There's Crimson Acolyte as well, which is the same thing for red. Not even close to as expensive. And, I mean, part of that, they were released in the same set, and they probably have similar opening numbers on Moto. I think that just comes down to the fact that Burn doesn't care. Like, Burn really doesn't care if you're playing creatures, it just wants you dead.
Right, because the big thing about Obsidian Acolyte is that it can block all of black's creatures. Whereas Burn, they're playing maybe Keldon Marauders and maybe Goblin Fireslinger, and those creatures, Keldon Marauders gets one attack basically before it goes away, and so they don't care as much about that.
Yeah, I think like it's pretty symptomatic of how big a deal Gurmag Angler is. Like, I definitely, when I first saw that card, I underestimated it a lot. And now, it's kind of one of those things which, when you're building your deck, you have to think, how do I deal with an Angler?
Mm-hmm. I've pondered that question many times, going from Relic of Progenitus to just straight up ignoring it, to Journey to Nowhere. I've run the gamut on how to deal with the card.
You could run Flare Husk. I know you're not a fan of that card, but Flare Husk can make most of your creatures a 5/5 instead of 4.
I'll just ignore it for now. That's my plan right now.
I think Affinity is lucky enough to be a fast enough deck where it doesn't have to care. But I think the big thing is, again, like as you touched upon, a lot of these cards are very cheap, and in a lot of cases, they are unique, old, weird effects where there isn't a good replacement. Like, Unearth is on this list. Unearth is $4 a copy on Moto, and I don't know of another effect that does what it does. There's Exhume, which does let your opponent get a creature back, so it's less good in the late game. It costs 1 more. It doesn't cycle. Like, a lot of these cards are pricey because they are very unique within the environment. So, while I can appreciate people looking for alternatives, many of these don't have alternatives.
And look, here's the other thing. If you want to play Delver that's not a very good example. I would encourage you, if you're looking to get into Pauper and you don't want to shell out the money for Dazes and Hydroblasts and etc., there are plenty of budget decks that you can play that don't require these cards.
Actually, Teachings is a great budget option on Moto.
And Teachings, I don't think I've seen many lists that play Hydroblast and Teachings. They'll just get rid of the spells. They run enough counter spells and they run enough removal. And Teachings, I would say, is a tier 1 deck in the format.
Yeah, I've definitely seen postings on MTG Goldfish of Teachings decks that on Moto were like $5-6.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you complain about a $5 or $6 full deck,
Magic might not be the hobby for you.
Magic might not be the hobby for you. I can definitely understand budgetary concerns with people, and especially I feel because a lot of people who show up for F&M at our local game store are a little bit on the younger side and probably have a little bit less disposable income. We're both adults with jobs, and we can afford to,
$40 for Power Blast, it's no problem, I say as I put on my top hat and monocle.
But I feel like in almost every one of these cases, there's not really a good replacement. Like, you can't replace Rancor in paper, which is expensive. Like, Oubliette, I do feel, is one that you can replace, though. Like,
Faceless Butcher?
Yeah, Faceless Butcher is the thing I've seen people replace it with. And it doesn't feel great. But Oubliette's not actually a great card once you look past the fact that it gives you 2 more devotion.
Yeah,
black.
it's really for Gary, and if you're not running the Gary variant of Mono Black Control, which is like, I don't know why you...
Everyone runs that, basically.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm saying that there are versions of Mono Black Control where you don't play Gary. He's just really good because if you're behind, he catches you up, and then the first one catches you up, the second one makes it so your opponent can't win anymore, and the third one finishes the game.
Yeah, and... like, Oubliette only saw rise in Pauper because of Gary. Like, look at it on its face. It is a Journey to Nowhere for 1 more mana that has the weird side effect of keeping auras attached to the creatures.
Which is really weird. That almost never comes up. In fact, I can only think of maybe one situation, and that is if your opponent has Aura Gnarlid and they put all their enchantments on that, and then you exile the Aura Gnarlid. Yeah. I think that might be one of the only examples where that's applicable.
If they have like 5 enchantments on their Aura Gnarlid, you're probably dead anyway.
Yes.
But yeah, like, Oubliette's a weird case of, like, yes, it's a good effect. Yes, the 2 devotion is relevant, but I definitely feel like you could 5-0 a league running no Oubliettes.
Well, and let's be real here. Most of these Mono Black lists only play maybe 2 Oubliettes, and you could play 2 more...
Victim of
Night, sure.
You could run some of the lesser edicts, like Diabolic Edict. It frees up 2 slots. And I think, for example, Oubliette's an example of a card that's somewhat pricey online. It's $2 a copy. In paper, it is a backbreaking $25 per copy.
You better really like Oubliette in your Mono Black Control deck. Or have been playing since Arabian Nights or something like that.
Yeah, like, I throw together Mono Black from time to time. I don't run Oubliette in it. And I don't ever feel like I'm missing out on it. Because the times where I'm like, man, Oubliette would be really nice, I still feel fine about Garying for 2 less. Like, Grey Merchant is still a good card in a deck with that many like black mana symbols. Like, just going like Chittering Rats, then like a Witches, and then like maybe another Chittering Rats into Gary. That's still a 16-point life swing. I'm really not that bummed out about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, not to harp on the point too much, but a lot of these cards are expensive because they fill very specific roles. Some cases they're a bit more expensive because of Moto's method of distribution and the fact that, cards weren't opened in the same numbers. Like, part of the reason Oubliette is so expensive in paper is Arabian Nights was not a very widely open set. There's not a lot of copies of it running around. Online, it got reprinted in one of the Masters editions. And I feel like people are more willing to draft online just because you can fire it whenever and, it's quick and easy.
No one's drafting Arabian Nights anymore. But Masters Edition, yeah.
Yeah, when the Masters Editions came out, those were the only ways to get cards from before Visions. Or Mirage, sorry. Everything before there was just kind of crammed into these Masters Editions. So people did crack them because there was good stuff in there that they needed. So there's some little bits of incongruity between the two. Like, Daze is really expensive online because Nemesis... Like, I started playing Masks Block. Masks Block Draft is awful. Like, it is a painful experience. Like, opening that pack of Prophecy and realizing I don't want to take a card out of this, and I hope none of it wheels back, is just crushing. And because it's in a bad draft format, less people are going to draft it on the flashbacks, and, less copies of Daze go into the market. And So I think it's the combination of like these are super unique effects that don't exist anywhere else in the game, and they weren't opened that widely. Right. So, you can wait for a reprint. And with a lot of cards on this list, I feel like we're all waiting for EMA. Like I am super hyped, because it means more legacy staples in rotation. It means possibility of rarity downshifts like we got in the Modern Masters products, which could be something really cool. Like there could be some real spice in there. And also reprints. Like I feel like everyone I've seen talking about it online is almost definite Hydro and Pyroblast are getting reprinted. And I think that would just be healthy for the format in general. But my advice to you is wait till the spoiler comes out, see what's in it, and then pull the trigger.
And it has to. And the spoiler's going to be out any day. We're almost in June.
Yeah, I think they said May 24th they're starting. So we've got less than 10 days until they hit, and I think then you make your call. Like again, I'm aware of the budgetary concerns, but a lot of these cards are at the end of the day worth it. Yes. If you're going to be playing this format a lot, I don't think you can get around that. And for the sideboard cards like Hydro and Pyroblast, they go in almost any deck that can play them.
They're well worth the investment. Is what we're trying to say here.
Yeah, and
well worth the investment.
Ancestral Mask, sure, it's $8, but is Boggles as good without Ancestral Mask? Not really. Like you can probably do okay, but yeah. So
either shell up for the card, or play a deck that doesn't require the card that's expensive. Play mono white if you don't want to buy Pyro and Hydroblasts.
Yeah, no. When I first got Mitgo, because I'm a scummy Mac user and I need to emulate Windows, and I didn't know if it was going to work out all that well. The first thing I bought was mono white because I'm like, okay, if this virtual machine just bricks itself, I'm going to be out like all of $5, and that's not the end of the world. So there are definitely budget lists, and one of the other great things about Mitgo is you can use your cards in any deck you want. Once you got your playset of something, you don't need extra copies.
You're good. And so like what I did was I think I actually just bought my Pyro Hydroblast. But like a good thing to do, especially with the leagues, because the value is so high, you can throw together a $5 mono white list and just grind out. I don't think I've paid to play in a league in like a year. You have to go 3-2 and you'll make back your points, and you can just go infinite basically.
Yeah.
And then like every time you play, as long as you 4-1, you're profiting.
Yeah. And like sure, it's not a huge profit, but at the same time it's called grinding for a reason.
Yes,
like,
it is the grind.
It's not quick,
but if you can 5-0 dailies on the regular, you're golden.
Yeah. I forget, are they paying out with play points now? Or?
They pay out with play points, and you can also get 2 packs if you 5-0. If you 4-1, you get 1 pack,
and then you sell those off.
Yeah, and then you're accumulating 4 to 8 tickets per run.
I think we pretty much covered what we want to say about that. And we've got a little bit of extra time here. And I've got a list here full of great questions that you guys sent in. And one of the things that I'm seeing here in my big old list is casual enough for sanctioned tournaments? This was an interesting one because what do you feel on this? Because I am absolutely okay. I just want to play Pauper.
Well, so here's the thing. Even though it's sanctioned as casual, our local game store still prizes out competitively. We get the same amount of prize for as if we had played Legacy or Standard. So we get the same amount of...
we actually get better than Standard. Our local store does the casual payout, which is like $3 credit or a pack for each win. We get the top heavy payout where it pays out to X and O, XO and 1s, and X1s. So if you lose more than one game, you're just out of the running for any money.
And I'm fine with that, but then again, I routinely X and 1 or better. So like I'm okay with that. It's really easy for me again as a grinder because I'm grinding out the value.
Yep.
But which is really the best thing you can do in Magic. So I'm okay with it being sanctioned as casual. I do not care about Planeswalker points. And if you're like a really heavy pauper player, you probably don't either, because the best thing those are good for is getting buys at big tournaments, which are never going to be pauper.
I mean, maybe one day, like, I don't know, like, Wizards has pauper on their radar, and I think they're aware that it's gaining in popularity.
Yeah.
But for example, Card Kingdom does their Rags to Riches events, and those are always supported by, like, amazing prizes. Like, they're 70-person tournaments, but, like, first prize the first time was, like, a Goyf and a Snapcaster,
And
I
like,
want to say.
I'm fine with that, but that's not what we're referring to when we're saying casual. We're talking about the actual sanctioning of the tournament, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying as long as the prize support is there,
Yes.
I feel like I don't care.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah. And, yeah, again, like, the Planeswalker points only matter if you're going to a GP or something. And I don't know, like, if I go to a GP, I'm probably not playing the main event, like, unless all of a sudden I see, like, a Cube GP or a Pauper GP, or someone is willing to let me borrow a $2,000 Legacy deck to go play Legacy.
Exactly.
Like, I think it's an interesting question to think about. Like, I think it would be cool because I'd be able to look at, like, my lifetime win ratios, and, like, I could definitely... I'm the kind of guy who would set up a spreadsheet to track.
Those are still in there. Your win-loss record is still in there.
Can you view it?
Yes. If you go to... I'll show you after this. Planeswalkerpoints.com. You put in your DCI number. You can view all your win-loss records. The only thing is, because it's sanctioned as casual, you only get one Planeswalker point for the entire event.
Yes.
But yeah, it'll still show you your win-loss records.
Because that was the other thing. I didn't really look through... When I, like, sign in, I don't really look that closely. And I know it tracks them because they've got, like, the little achievement things.
Yes.
And I definitely got one for, like, 4-0ing an event.
Yeah, there's also one called that I'm sure a lot of people don't have, called a casual master. And
Yes.
you have to play in, like, X amount of casual events, and if you play a lot of pauper, you're gonna get that achievement real quick.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think it would be kind of neat to, you know, have it be sanctioned as an event, as a format, just because it would get more people playing it. And I understand from the game store's perspective, you know, it's not super great. Like, the biggest profit margin for them is packs, like, just selling packs to people. And we don't buy packs. Like, we occasionally will buy packs for other purposes, but for actual pauper, have you ever cracked a pack looking for cards?
But you could make that argument for Legacy as well, right? Like, the big difference is that the cards cost way more, which I guess...
Exactly. Like, from the game store's perspective, I understand that, like, they'd rather sell one Legacy staple for $100 than have someone buy $100 worth of pauper cards in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. Because pauper is also eternal. And it means that once you buy a deck, you've got it. And barring a banning, you're good to go. My only other concern would be, you know, if it becomes a sanctioned format, I really, really don't want what happened to Modern to happen to us.
No, they'll never make pauper a pro tour format. Let's knock on some wood. But I don't think they're ever going to make pauper a pro tour format. I don't think I have to worry about that.
I don't think... It's just in the back of my head. Like, I just don't want aggressive bannings in a format that is very open. We have, 10 cards on the ban list, and every one of them deserves to be on there fully.
Yes.
Like, I don't know if you were playing when Treasure Cruise was legal.
I was. It was a 4 of in every single deck.
Exactly. Like, Tron was playing it and hard casting it sometimes. Like, that is not a good or healthy format.
No.
And I feel like because we have this very, very minute ban list and a pretty big pool of cards, I feel like that works out for a really healthy and diverse format, and I wouldn't want that to change.
This is actually something that's kind of interesting because the ban list only exists on Moto, right? So we're able to play Red Blasts and Blue Blasts and Hymn to Torok and all these other cards in paper because there's no ban list for them. Now, we have a regional ban, not a regional, but like a store, local ban list of cards we've deemed too powerful. But if Wizards were to create like a paper-sanctioned event for this, they would have to go back and maybe ban some of these other cards also, I think.
Well, they would have to make the call of, you know, do you... Because there's the paper pool and there's the online pool. And they've got to make the hard call of, do we combine these into one, you know, full pauper pool, which would mean needing reprints on Mitgo.
Mm-hmm.
Or do we just say, you have to go by Mitgo rarity? And
misery. Him to Torok.
Like, I feel him gets the ban immediately. There was actually a week on MidGo. I saw some old video of someone who was playing like a couple of casual matches on MidGo in Pauper, and there was one week where they messed up and somehow him to Torok was registering as a common. And watching that resolve and like hearing the person's voice just being like, "What was that? Why did they get to cast that?" It's just heartbreaking because, like, as we've said before, even if it hits the 2 worst cards in your hand, it still doesn't feel great.
No, not even a little bit.
Especially knowing that they might hit you with another one next turn. I definitely feel like getting it sanctioned as an event is not a huge priority for me within this format. And I'm cool with the casual point. Like, I'm cool with the one Planeswalker point for showing up at FNM. Because I'm really here to play a format I enjoy. Like, I'm not a grinder. I just enjoy playing this card game. Like, it's my end of the week break where Friday, check out of work, go down to the game store, play 4 rounds, laugh, have a good time with friends.
Well, I have a good time. I just also need to make sure I profit so I can save up for those legacy staples.
Well, yeah, sure. Like our LGS actually gives out these metal coins.
Yeah, they look
credit.
Like pirate doubloons. They're beautiful.
Yeah. No, which has a certain like kitsch to it that I love. Like just having this stack of like gold and silver coins and coming in and being like, I'm going to make a purchase with these silly pieces of fictional currency. I appreciate it.
They have dragons on them, though.
They do. They have dragons on them. Like, it's everything that I ever wanted out of a Magic store.
It's like a heap of dragon silver.
Yeah.
Please, sell me some spells, good peddler.
Exactly. Like, I definitely get
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Especially since you have to cross that bridge over, like, the moat to get up to the house, and then you go in and there's a kindly old wizard at the counter.
Do we want to just out where we go to play?
Yeah, we play Pauper at Pat's games in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, and Pat's was recently actually in a lot of the news. They got robbed. They had $75,000 worth of staples stolen.
Something extreme.
And they just recovered them, actually.
Most of it. And they caught the fencer, not the actual burglars, but they caught the fence.
Yeah, and, good on them. But Pat's is really a great game store. And I love going there. I like the people who work there. They are all friendly. They are knowledgeable. I have a good time.
It's also great that they were like, oh, you guys want like competitive prized Pauper tournaments? Sure, no problem.
Yeah, they basically told us, show up with enough people and we'll do this. And that's great. Like, Pauper started right after Tiny Leaders kind of died out. And it kind of moved in to replace that as like the more casual friendly but still competitive format. And, I'm really glad that, we were just able, like, it was me and 2 other guys, and we were just like, we want to do Pauper on Friday nights. And yeah, Pat was just like, sure, I'll put it on the website and people can come by and we can figure out prize support. And
we get F&M promos even too. We're like fully supported Pauper tournament, which is a luxury I think a lot of people do not have at their LGS.
Well, yeah, because the other big well-known one is Card Kingdom, and they do a tournament like once every couple months. And while yes, they're much bigger than ours, I like being able to have the every Friday night I can go play Pauper with people I enjoy. Mm-hmm. And Pat's is great for that. They also have a huge back catalog. They have walls of cards.
Yeah, they have basically everything you'd ever need.
Yeah.
Except for foil prophetic prisms, if you're listening.
But, like, super professional. They've got an online portal for placing your orders, which I love. Like, the fact that I can, like, at the beginning of my day before I go to work on Friday, if I'm ordering cards, I just submit an order. And when I get there, it is waiting for me, wrapped up with my name on it. Easy, no mess.
Be jealous of us.
No. It's a great store. If you're ever in the Austin area, I highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, and then you can come hang out with us. We'll play some Pauper. It'll be fun.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, if you're listening to this podcast, odds are I have a feeling you're pretty into this format. And if you threw together a deck...
Yeah, come by.
Yeah, it'd be great. Like, most of us are, pretty friendly human beings, not a whole lot of like salt mongers or like
We haven't met me
terrible
yet.
people. Like we definitely want to like give Pats the shout out for being a great LGS, like arguably one of my favorites. And we're in a town with a lot of good game stores.
I think there's maybe 5.
I
don't know if they're all good, but I think there's at least. Well, no, there's more because we're talking about North Austin. There's South Austin too, and they have like 3 or 4 more down there.
Every game store I've been to in this town since I moved here 3 years ago has impressed the hell out of me. I used to live in Boston. There were 2 game stores, one of which barely had enough room for an 8-person draft. And coming here and, seeing these huge stores with like massive selections of singles or, there's Dragon's Lair that's right near me that, has all kinds of games. Huge difference. But Pat's is far and away one of the better game stores I have ever set foot in. And, I feel like if we can give back by giving them a tiny bit of free advertising, I feel like that's the most we can do besides, continuing to go there and buy cards from them, which I will continue to do probably until I move from here.
You can't move. Just kidding. The day will come.
Yeah.
We'll keep broadcasting though. Don't worry about it. You the consumers don't need to worry about that. That's a distant future.
But yeah, I think that pretty much closes up today.
I think we're good. Special shout out. We got to do some shout outs. Obviously, just shout out to Pats. I'd like to shout out to L for the use of his song Quantitative as our theme song. You can find him at soundcloud.net/LLL. That's ELLELLELL. Also shout out to Pats for being the Pauper LGS.
Yeah. Shout out to them for, being very supportive, having great stock, great atmosphere, great employees. And we are now on iTunes.
Yes, we are now on iTunes. Take that away.
We're on iTunes. We are Color Commentary, misspelled as we are everywhere. We also now have a website, colorcommentary.com, common as in a common card. And we will be uploading the videos to our new Color Commentary specific YouTube.
Which we'll put on the site too, I'm guessing.
Yes. Each post will have, a link to the YouTube thing, and you'll be able to subscribe to us on iTunes, whichever works better for you. We love your support. If you have any criticism, comments, suggestions, decks you want us to talk about, subjects you want us to talk about, all of those can be emailed to colorcommentary@gmail.com.
Yes.
And we will take a look at them, and we're probably going to pick like one deck to talk about each week, and 1 or 2 topics depending on how long it takes us to fully discuss those to the point where we feel like we've gotten everything we can out of them.
Then our last week tonight, what you play at F&M segment.
I think we feel like that's a pretty good structure for the show. But yeah, anything you want to add to the show, any sort of...
Yeah, we're very, very fluid. We appreciate all feedback, and we'll definitely take it into consideration.
Yeah, we just want to sit here for an hour or so every week and talk about Pauper. There's not much more to it than that. But thanks again for all the great support for the first episode. I was actually really impressed when more than 4 people responded positively. And, thanks for bearing with us through our, kind of scatterbrained first episode. Hopefully this one was a little bit more focused. And moving forward, we'll try and keep that up and, give you guys a decent attempt at a Pauper podcast. We're just as new to this as we can be, but
I'm Adrian Guarzales.
And I'm Michael Petchik, signing out for Color Commentary.